This video will contain spoilers for Xenogears, so play the game, know about the plot of the game, not care about spoilers, wait for me to finish my recap so you know everything that happens, and then watch this, okay? Remember that video I made a while ago about how Nagi from Xenoblade X is really cool? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, the character from Xenogears who most inspired him is also pretty cool. So this time, I'm just gonna talk about how cool Citan Uzuki is. Sorry, based on the pronunciation of that last name in Xenosaga, should be Citan Uzuki, but I give you no promises of being able to keep the pronunciation going for this entire video. Anyway, in addition to getting to say probably the majority of the best lines in the game, his level of abilities and achievements goes far beyond the impossible, so we're just gonna go through them in a list. I think the easiest thing to go to for talking about this is his TV tropes page, because one of the tropes he's listed as falling under is the ace, aka the person who's just good at everything they attempt and can do no wrong. So I'm just gonna read the entry verbatim from his bullet point for the ace. Citan is a 29-year-old greatest swordsman in the world, an expert scientist, a master engineer, the main character's mentor without ever dying, perpetually the most intelligent person around, a spy, a double agent, one of the approximately 10 people who actually knows what's going on in the world, one of the earlier generation of heroes, keeper of the backstory, and also has a pretty sword-fighting wife and an adorable daughter with mysterious powers. Not to mention that while his gear is rather mediocre ability-wise toward the end of the game, he is perfectly capable of getting out of it and slaughtering gear-sized enemies on foot, and is better at it than most gears. In a mild subversion, despite being that awesome, he really is a geek deep down. I'm going to take a breath now. So, yeah, I'm just gonna go through that thing point by point. Starting out with 29 years old. That might not sound too impressive until you remember everything else in that list, but also, just taking into account one of the things he is, because, you know, greatest swordsman in the world, at 29, sure, he's probably near his physical peak and has had a long enough time to train. That's okay, yeah, I could totally see you becoming the best fighter in one discipline in the world at that age. But let's just focus on the doctor part first. In the US, usually you need to be 30 to become a doctor after you've finished all of med school and all that stuff. He has been a doctor for at least 3 years already by the time the game starts, when he is 29 years old, which is in and of itself insane, and on top of that, that's only the first point on the list! We haven't talked about anything else yet! Let's see, greatest swordsman in the world. He started learning sword techniques at the age of 7 from his grandfather, and became a guardian angel of Solaris, not only the highest ranked, but probably also the most powerful fighters in the entire empire, at the age of 20, and was already an element in Jugend, which he started when he was about 15. He personally organized an attack on Shavat that took 2 years of planning, and while there, fought its strongest warrior, Citan Uzuki, to a standstill. He might have not even had his limiter removed at this point, because he can't use level 7 death blows until everyone else gets theirs unlocked. Citan convinced him to lay down his sword, which he only picks up again later when the world is in peril, and without it, he's still so good at fighting that he's the best party member in the game without it. Also, it's only been 5 years since he stopped using his sword and training in unarmed combat under Citan. Expert scientist, master engineer. He's of course not only a medical doctor, but probably a good enough scientist and engineer to have multiple PhDs as well and be a doctor that way. Perfect Works reveals he designed a lot of Solaris' weapons, including many of the bosses you fight during the game. Ramses' original gear Wyvern, Jesse's buntline gear, although Jesse did improve it later to not kill the pilot, so this was probably one of his earlier works from the Jugend years, parts of Oxen, and all of the gears the present elements use, so he's probably also responsible for the glorious G-Elements cutscene. In addition to that, he also designed the Aerod system Ellie's gear uses, aka one of the most broken attacks in this very, very broken game, and is also incredibly smart at figuring things like Merkava and the inner workings of Deus out. Main character's mentor without even dying. I mean, in the long run of the Xeno series, this isn't too surprising. Mentors have a reasonably good track record of not getting killed throughout the game, but who's to say the others would have survived without him there to set the precedent and blaze the amazing trail forward of being cool people who actually stay in the party for the entire game. Most intelligent person around / one of the approximately 10 people who actually knows what's going on in the world. He's not only a natural intellectual, not my words, Perfect Works itself says this, but is also in the position of being told basically everything about everything by Emperor Cain. He's probably within the top 5 most powerful and influential Solarians outside the Emperor and Gazelle Ministry, and it's kind of implied that he even knows Cain's plan is to die in the end, and is aware of his real goal to atone and set the world free. It's not until Disc 2 when he ever shows signs of not having a handle on the entire situation as a whole, and that is way after everyone else stops understanding everything, so, you know, there you go. A spy and a double agent. Let's see. He claims to be just a normal country doctor who came to Lahan and treated Faye when he arrived and all that stuff, but actually he's a guy who escaped from the Empire of Solaris and has knowledge about all that going on. But he's actually one of the highest ranking people in the Empire of Solaris, and is actually masquerading as a doctor, keeping an eye on Faye for the Emperor. But actually, the Emperor isn't the real bad guy there, and is more or less on the hero's side. But actually, once the Emperor dies, Citan formally joins the party to back up Faye and Faye alone in his quest to do things. I don't even know if that counts as a double agent. I lost track. There's maybe at least 3 or 4 levels of agent in there, but he's all of them. Part of the earlier generation of heroes. Besides Ramses, the OG elements are basically the original Ellies, people who grew up or were surrounded by the infrastructure of Solaris and realized, hey, that's kind of a bad, let's not do a bad, let's try to take it out and fix it from within. So they started doing that long before Ellie did. Keeper of the backstory. Again, he's the only one who knows anything that's going on, and the only good guy who knows remotely anything about the world besides Empire bad, and a lot of people don't even realize their own personal enemies are connected to the Empire. And even if they could fight without needing Citan's help, they'd still be completely lost without just his historical knowledge, or just him being able to say, yeah, Faye has multiple personalities and that explains a lot of the weird stuff that's been going on. Pretty sword-fighting wife. I have to say, Citan and Yui Uzuki are probably the bigger power couple even compared to Faye and Ellie. Not only is Yui the granddaughter of the only man who could fight him to a stalemate, not even beat him, and was trained by him, it's said that her martial arts skills are the pride of Shavat, but she was also the strongest fighter in her country at some point, above Wiseman. And it's also implied in Perfect Works that he even entrusted some of his sword skills to her when he gave up the blade. It's very likely she's the only reason the survivors of Lahan Village ever made it to Shavat alive. Like, let's just say, Citan's real name is Hyuga Rikido. There's a reason that when he had to come up with a disguise name when he went down to the surface, that it was just like, you know, let's see, I'm a guardian angel going down to the surface, so first name, cool, let's be the devil, because that makes sense. Last name, is that even a question? Of course I'm taking my wife's last name. Her family's just as cool as mine. And then, adorable daughter. We don't really know where Midori's powers come from, but given what we've seen so far from her parents and other ancestors, it's probably just their genetics that somehow came together and were like, yeah, screw it, no one else in this world has psychic powers, but she does now, because they just put that much badass DNA in one place, it's gotta do something. Can beat gear-sized enemies on foot. Once he gets his sword back, he becomes even stronger than he was before, having dummy high attack power, probably Rico level. I haven't checked the actual stats, but I think Rico has the highest physical attack. Sword Citan might keep up with him, especially because now he can equip weapons. And that's all on top of his stupid high agility. So, if you really want to set him up that way, he can act twice before any other party member can even go once. There isn't anything too special about his gear in the end, but he's easily the best character on foot, by far, to the point where Faye's contact powers are never really even needed in gameplay. And of course, on top of all that, he really is a geek deep down. Despite all of this, he just really likes technology and goofing off. He has some of the best comedic lines too, which is kind of amazing that he has a sense of humor on top of all that. I mean, I guess when your job is literally everything, the only hobby you can really have is de-stressing by goofing off a bit. But, yeah. Citan is really cool. Let's just keep this in mind. Canonically, by the end of the game, Faye is not a virgin, and yet he still looks like one, compared to the absolute Chad that is the good Dr. Uzuki. They had to split his character traits between two siblings in Xenosaga, because in a fully 3D game, you can't have all that concentrated awesome in one character. It'd destroy the game disc. He's even the only character in the game, besides the main couple, to get a chair scene. And honestly, that's the greatest honor he's ever had. But also keep in mind, this is Solaris. He's from Solaris, the most classist society in this entire world, and he worked his way up from being a third-class citizen to a guardian angel easily. Also, he has an Omni gear, so he's Anima Relic compatible, which, just keep in mind, that doesn't seem to be a thing that you can earn. You just have to be lucky enough to do it. And yep, there he is. Emperor's like, yeah, here you go. You want Fenris? You can have it. I'm running out of things to say, so I'm going to leave this on probably the only bad thing against his record, and that's that he forced the localizers to do a bit more work. His name is pronounced slightly differently in English than it is in Japanese, and it's more than just a language barrier. It's because his Japanese name, the official romanization of it, according to Perfect Works, is Citan. So, basically, in order to make you take him seriously, they had to change the pronunciation of his name slightly, so he wasn't poop. That's all I got. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. I really don't know how I'm gonna edit this, but it's gonna be fun, no matter what it is. Citan's a cool dude. I don't think I'm going to name this video Citan Uzuki is a radical dude like I did the Nagi one, but, I mean, it's true, he's a radical dude, but he really is the most interesting man in the world. Let's be real. Next video I'm gonna make is probably something related to it being the new year, because, at least in the original Japanese version of X, something very important happened in 2020 that sorta set the stage for the timeline to diverge into all the scale technology stuff that we see in 2054 by the time the game takes place. So I'm basically gonna go over things like, hey, what did this change? What are things that we know happened in the world between 2020 and 2054 based on context clues and stuff like that? So I hope you enjoy that, and until then, this is Luxin.